And we are live. You already know who it is. My name is Mike Kyle, aka the Fantasy Vulture. I have over a decade worth of fantasy football experience and have continuously competed for fantasy championships over the course of the past 7 seasons. Let's make it 8 in 2021. But enough of me. I'm here for you. On today's episode of the FV Show, we're going to be kicking off our divisional preview series by taking a look at the AFC North. We're going to be covering the Browns, Bengals, Ravens, and Steelers in this video/podcast, wherever you may be listening. So if you are enjoying this, be sure to either hit that like button down below or drop us a review on Apple Podcasts. And last but not least, subscribe so you never miss an episode from me. But without further ado, let's get started. No need for any other further intro besides the fact that you can follow me on all social media platforms at FFVulture. There is a special limited time draft consulting offer for you over there on social media, so go be sure to click the link down below for all my social media channels, and also then click the link later on in my profiles to get access to that. Now let's dive in, shall we? We're going to start off with the Cleveland Browns, and the way that I'm going to be doing this is I'm going to be going through some of the questions that you might have when talking about each team. If I don't talk about a player, that pretty much means that I'm fine with you drafting them. I don't have any strong takes on them whatsoever, but I am going to try and give at least one little nugget for each guy, just so that way you kind of have a frame of reference as to what I would do if I'm in the clock. Even if I just spend 20 seconds talking about it, it's better than zero, right? So let's just dive right in to the Cleveland Browns. And I want to start off here with the running backs, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, because this is a backfield that is so dynamic in nature. 2 studs. Kareem Hunt would be a stud all-star on any other team, besides the fact that he's the backup running back to Nick fucking Chubb, right? So it's a crazy situation there. In Cleveland, it's the best run game in the NFL in terms of tandem, right? And obviously, Derrick Henry, kind of in a league of his own, but between the two-headed monster between Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, it is what it is. So the question that I have for you who wants to draft Nick Chubb: when are you looking to draft Nick Chubb? Because that's where I get caught up. When you look at the running back position of who's going right now in the first round, I'm going to read you off the current ADP. This is half point, 12-man league. You got CMC, Dalvin, Derrick Henry, Kamara, Zeke, Chubb, Barkley. And that brings you to 107 right there. Here's the thing. When you go through and you look at the names that I just read off, there's something really interesting. I just gave you 7 names. We'll say 6. Let's remove Nick Chubb from the equation. I gave you 6 names. 5 of the 6 are workhorse running backs. The only one who isn't is Alvin Kamara, who's one of the best pass-catching running backs in the NFL. So anything that he loses in terms of rush attempts, he's going to make up in receptions, right? And it's the way that Alvin Kamara is built as a football player that makes him so valuable for fantasy. So when we start talking about first-round running backs and Nick Chubb comes up, you don't have the pass-catching work that a top-tier first-round running back would get. You also are removing about 40-45% of the workload because he's splitting with Kareem Hunt. And I know Nick Chubb is great. I know Nick Chubb is one of the best power running backs in the NFL, probably behind Derrick Henry, right? Probably 1-2. But what are you doing drafting Nick Chubb before any of those 6 running backs that I listed? That's where I get caught up. Even still, if you want to take it a step further with Aaron Jones, who I would rather have over Nick Chubb. Jonathan Taylor, I feel like that's kind of the point where it's a toss-up for me. So when you're talking about Nick Chubb and where you're drafting him, he's going to be great. He's going to find his way into the end zone, and he's going to rack up a ton of rushing yards. But situation-wise, I want my first running back, personally, to be a workhorse. If I'm drafting running back in the first round, I want that dude. I want to know. I want to know that I'm getting 325 touches in total for my guys. And that number's obviously now skewed because of the 17-game schedule. But I think you get my point, right? Zeke, workhorse. Alvin Kamara, different story, whatever. Derrick Henry, workhorse. CMC, workhorse. Dalvin Cook, workhorse. Even Joe Mixon, if you really want to stretch just a little bit, Joe Mixon's going to be a workhorse running back. So it's not to say that Nick Chubb can't do it. It's just that in my first round, I want dominance and I want opportunity. Nick Chubb's going to give you dominance. He's not going to give you opportunity, and that's where the difference lies. So between all the running backs that I'm taking, like that's kind of where the tier break is when you start talking Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb. And honestly, like depending on how you slice the Colts, I really don't see Nyheim Hines or Marlon Mack being a threat to Jonathan Taylor, and I have Jonathan Taylor ahead of Nick Chubb. So just something to think about when you're looking to draft Nick Chubb. Now on the other side of that coin, Kareem Hunt. I almost said Alvin Kamara, but Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt is a very interesting case here for me. I very traditionally do not like drafting backup running backs. I want the starters. I want the dudes who are going to get work. I'm not a big fan of drafting running back by committees. Another reason why I'm not the biggest fan of Nick Chubb, kind of as I was alluding to there. So what do you do with Kareem Hunt, who has all the talent in the world, but is splitting in a backfield like that? I think I figured it out. If I'm going to take Kareem Hunt, I'm going to take Kareem Hunt as, at the absolute worst case scenario, my third running back. I can't have him be my running back too. He will be my third running back, and I'm only willing to take him once the backfields get messy. Here's what I mean. Where Kareem Hunt is being drafted in the back of the 4th round at 410, other players in the area where you're drafting Kareem Hunt are James Robinson, Mike Davis, Raheem Mostert, Travis Etienne, and Chase Edmonds. If you kind of break down what those running back situations look like, Travis Etienne and James Robinson, both guys are just in like this clusterfuck that's Jacksonville right now. We have no idea how that's going to shake out, so that's kind of a coin flip decision. If you start looking at Raheem Mostert, 1 year left on his deal, yes, running back for the 49ers and a really great offense, but can he stay healthy? We know that the revolving door of running backs in San Francisco just goes around. Literally, there's 4 of them. There's literally 4 of them every single year. Chase Edmonds, I'm lower on Chase Edmonds, and I think everybody else. I was actually explaining this to somebody who was in my DMs asking about Chase Edmonds earlier this week. And then you go down the list just a bit further, and it's Javonte Williams, Damian Harris. So once the starting running backs go, and you're now in this point of just messy backfields, that's the point where I'm willing to take Kareem Hunt. Let me put it this way. The last 2 running back I'd say I'd probably take before Kareem Hunt are Myles Gaskin, because I don't view Malcolm Brown as a threat, and I think that Gaskin returns to form of what he had last year. So Gaskin and Mike Davis, because there's nobody else in Atlanta behind Mike Davis either. That situation could change as the offseason kind of unfolds. I know they just signed Deonta Foreman. I really don't give a shit. So just being able to kind of look at the board that way and identify where does the backfield get messy. And once you find yourself into those situations, that's when I'm a lot more comfortable taking Kareem Hunt and pulling the trigger on him as my 3rd running back. Otherwise, let's now move on to wide receivers. If I'm looking down my notes here, I'm just trying to figure out going order. You guys know how this goes. There's a lot of preparation that goes into this. So shifting over to wide receivers now, this is where things get fun. And I want to talk about Odell Beckham, who I historically have not been a fan of. I've been burned by Odell before. I know a lot of you have as well. But guys, this might be the year. It might be bounce back season for Odell Beckham Jr., and I'm really excited about that. So let's talk about this. Odell Beckham right now is being drafted at wide receiver 24. The hype is gone. The expectation is gone. The talent is still there. It's still there, and that's where you can get real creative with your draft strategy. This year, more than any other year I think it's been, because every single year the wide receiver pool just gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and it's why you're seeing a lot of 3 wide receiver leagues now. When you look at the board this year, you legitimately do not have to draft a wide receiver until the 5th round. I'm honestly 6th, and this kind of makes the point. Odell Beckham right now is going at 605. You tell me that I get Odell as my wide receiver 1, and in the very next round, I can get a T. Higgins, I can get a Devonta Smith, a Courtland Sutton, and I'm just running those 2 wide receivers with some combination of CEH, let's go Zeke, let's say we go early tight end with Darren Waller, and you tell me like my core players, Zeke, CEH, Kittle, whatever, Odell, and what's another name? I'm just looking at this list. Let's go T. Higgins, who's going to get 100 targets. That's a dream. Are you kidding? We are in the 6th round. Like, that's what I'm talking. And actually, I'm even missing a guy there because I went, yeah, like you still have a 4th round pick that you can take, and you can even take a wide receiver there and maybe go Cooper Kupp, Chris Godwin, Adam Thielen, and so you're literally running Godwin, Beckham, and Higgins on top of CEH, Zeke, and Waller, Kittle, whatever early tight end you want to go with. That's my point, is you're looking at somebody who has all the upside in the world, the expectations are removed, who knows what actually ends up happening with Odell, but just being able to have that guy as your potential number 1 if you decide to punt the position. Like, can you name a better late round wide receiver to have or mid round wide receiver to have as your number 1 than Odell fucking Beckham, who, again, I've been burned on by the past. Odell, I say this lovingly, but I think I need to make this point. Odell Beckham is my least favorite player in the NFL, and these are the things that I'm saying about him, where I'm actively targeting him in my draft because you're just looking at the value of the board and the depth of the wide receiver position, and it's how do you not take him there? Like, this board is set up this year to where you hammer running backs early, you grab a mid-round tight end, and then in the mid to back of your draft, you are just dart-throwing wide receivers over and over and over again. And that's why I'm excited about Odell this year. Now, let's talk about the other Browns wide receiver, and that's going to be Jarvis Landry, who, on the contrary, is one of my favorite wide receivers in the NFL, who historically, year over year over year, overperforms his ADP, and goddamn it, it's happening again. Jarvis Landry's ADP is currently in the 10th round, wide receiver 43. I don't know the last time that Jarvis Landry finished outside of the top 36. So I'm actually going to pull this up right now on Sleeper. Because off the top of my head, I don't know, but I just know, and we all know this in the fantasy community, that Jarvis Landry, especially in PPR leagues, is just this constant flex start, constant wide receiver 2. You just plug him in and you just kick your feet up because you know that points are going to be put on the board. It might not be anything too crazy, but it's going to be enough to get you by week over week. So let's just pull this up now because I'm actually really curious on his finishes. Like last year, wide receiver 33. Do I have a... I do have... There we go. History. Cool. I'm going to read you... I'm going to read you Jarvis Landry's just finishes in PPR formats over the course of his career. Wide receiver 33, wide receiver 12, wide receiver 18, wide receiver 6, wide receiver 14, wide receiver 8, wide receiver 34. And again, he's currently being drafted in the 10th round at wide receiver 43. You tell me. You tell me. Every single year, like clockwork, Jarvis Landry overperforms his ADP. And it's going to happen again, and he's going to be a godsend for you in the 10th round. Again, you can wait on wide receiver because you have Jarvis Landry in the 10th round. Imagine Jarvis Landry just for shits and giggles here. Like, let's just go extreme. Jarvis Landry in the 10th round is your wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3, one of the two. Like, either way you slice it. If you really want, and you just want to go 0 wide receiver, Jarvis Landry as your, actually you'd have to do this on the turn, it looks like, just based off current ADP. So let's say you're in the back of your draft. At 9-11, you go Brandon Cooks as your wide receiver 1, who's going to see all the targets in Houston, doesn't matter if they're good or not. And then you have Jarvis Landry as your wide receiver 2. And then let's say in the 11th round, you get Henry Ruggs, a guy you could take a dart throw on. Corey Davis, who you could take a dart throw on. Darnell Mooney, who you could take a dart throw on. I'm telling you, wide receivers grow on trees. Jarvis Landry in the 10th round is the perfect example of this. Please go get him in your drafts. He's going to save you during bye weeks. He's going to save you during injuries just because you have a plug-and-play guy every single week. Who else do I need to talk about in this offense? Let's talk about Baker real quick. You're not going to play Baker in a 1 QB league. In terms of Superflex, I personally don't think that Baker has done enough to warrant that. Like, I would rather start Fitzpatrick than Baker just because I'm looking at ceilings here. I'm just looking at ceilings, and with the way this Browns offense is structured, that's not to say Baker can't be good, but in terms of just like sheer fantasy purposes, I'm not sure if Baker can put together a season that Ryan Fitzpatrick can. I'm not sure if Baker can put together a season that Joe Burrow can. I'm not sure if Baker can put together a season that Jalen Hurts or Taysom Hill can because of the rushing upside, right? So just kind of ballpark here. Going through my rankings here, which I still need to make a whole video about why rankings are shit. But I have Baker right now, it looks like at quarterback 23. Which seems about right. Like, I would rather have Justin Fields. I would rather have Stafford. I'd rather have Kirk Cousins just because of offensive weapons. But even just going down the list here just a bit more, like Jimmy G or Trey Lance, I'd rather have Trey Lance. I would rather have Baker than Jimmy G. Wentz is obviously injured. I would rather have Baker over Goff, Baker over Tua. Baker over Derek Carr is interesting. Like, that kind of feels where, like, that tier gap is. Sam Darnold or Baker, like, yes, Darnold isn't historically has been terrible, but I love the weapons in Carolina. So it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, if you gotta go Baker, you gotta do what you gotta do. I'm not gonna stop you, but just know that the upside isn't there. Now let's move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this is gonna be a bit of a shorter section actually, because I'm not sure the Steelers have a whole lot to talk about. But I do want to talk about Naji Harris, rookie running back from Alabama, who I am calling Derrick Henry light because that is what he is, except for he catches passes and this backfield is all of his. We saw him get quite a bit of work in the preseason game versus Dallas, but just looking at the potential of Naji Harris, he's probably one of my favorite second-round running backs to take, just because you know he's going to get all of the work. And again, the argument that I made against Nick Chubb is the argument that I'm going to make for Naji Harris, and that's just he's going to get all the work. He's going to be able to pass. He's going to be able to catch passes, and he's in a really good offense. And that's not to say that Nick Chubb isn't, but again, you're just looking at terms of workload and opportunity. If they're equal in talent, which who's to say? We haven't seen Naji Harris play a game, but just outside looking in and just kind of looking at metrics. Like, where is the ceiling for Naji Harris in year one? Because right now, I have Naji Harris, I think, as my running back 11. I have Naji Harris as my running back 10 on the year. So he's definitely going to finish in that running back 1 range, especially with Cam Akers going down with that torn Achilles. And you just look at tier gaps here. I look at it where it's like Naji Harris, Joe Mixon, and Antonio Gibson are all kind of in that same tier. And those are all guys who are very likely going to finish the year as a running back 1. And you're getting Naji Harris right now. Let's pull this up. One moment. Yeah, Naji Harris is going at 201. So like right around that turn. And that's interesting. Here's why. Because if you are in the back of the first round, and let's say you go wide receiver, or even if you go tight end, and you go Kelsey, let's just go Kelsey and Devontae Adams just to kind of pick off wide receiver 1 and tight end 1. And then on the turn back, you go Naji Harris, who's going to get 300 touches this year. Like, that is just a workhorse running back on the turn at a value that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get, because you now have this opportunity to where you have the number 1 tight end or the number 1 wide receiver compared to a running back who is going to finish inside the top 12 and is going to get all of the work and has all the upside in the world. He's not going to finish as a top 5 guy, but even still getting a guy who's in the top 10, and you have that positional advantage at the tight end position as well. Like, that's just a really good counterbalance, and I'm really excited to see what Naji Harris does in Pittsburgh this year. Yes, their offensive line is trash. It's fine. I'm honestly not too worried about it, to be honest. I just think that the talent is going to win out when it comes to Naji Harris, and just that offense, it just always hangs points up on the board, and I don't believe that they're going to slow down quite yet. So that's my thoughts on Naji. It's really interesting, actually, when you look at the idea between Austin Ekeler and Naji Harris. For me, I'm going to take Naji. I actually have Austin Ekeler. I think at running back 13, if I'm not mistaken. And actually, let me just read you off these real quick. So I got Mixon at 9, Naji Harris at 10, Antonio Gibson at 11, Chris Carson 12, and Austin Ekeler at 13. And between Carson and Ekeler, probably actually going to flip that to Ekeler at 12. But Naji Harris, again, as your running back 1 on the turn, or even as your second running back, if you go running back, I mean, that's, again, volume that you can't find. So totally in on Naji for this season during his rookie campaign. And now let's shift gears to the wide receivers. I don't know where to start with this. I'm going to be honest. So let me do this. Let me pull up my wide receiver ranks. Okay. Here's where my concerns are. I don't know what to do with any of these wide receivers. That's really what this comes down to. We have the opposite of what we have in Tampa Bay. In Tampa Bay, we have 3 great wide receivers, and we know that no matter what, all 3 of those guys are going to be consistent. Here in Pittsburgh, we have 3 good wide receivers, but none of them are going to be consistent. Last year, we saw Deontay Johnson hurt up and down all year. When he was on the field, he was great, but he was just so banged up, he would get hurt in the first quarter, leave the game, trot back out the following week, get hurt again in the third quarter, and then was out for the game. So what I found for Deontay Johnson was this stat. I think it's really interesting. All 3 of his wide receiver 2 finishes were top 15 overall for the week, which means he basically finished 13, 14, or 15 in all 3 of his wide receiver 2 finishes. 3 of his non-top 36 finishes, he played less than 50% of snaps because of injury. Only 3 times did he play more than 50% of snaps and failed to record 10 points. Week 1 in 2 games against Baltimore, one of the best defenses in the league. He had 13 targets in the second game against Baltimore. So let me break this down for you what this actually means. When Deontay Johnson is on the field, Deontay Johnson is really fucking good. When Deontay Johnson is not on the field, Deontay Johnson is unplayable. But how can you predict injury? You can't. You can't. And that's kind of where my holdup is. I have Deontay Johnson as my number 1 ranked Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver, and it is really just based upon that talent. But we have to factor in injuries when it comes to some players like Deontay Johnson, who you simply can't rely on week in, week out, because you don't know what the consistency is actually going to look like. And that brings us to Chase Claypool, who Claypool in his rookie campaign was a monster. He basically Mike Evans. I feel like that's a very fair comparison. Just big, strong wide receivers, go up, jump ball type. Chase Claypool, 11 touchdowns his rookie season. Pretty good, not bad if I say so myself. But with Chase Claypool in particular, he had 4 games as a wide receiver 1, so that's 4 games as a top 12 wide receiver. He had 2 games as a wide receiver 2, so that's 2 games from wide receiver 13 to 24. And then he also had 2 games as a wide receiver 3, which is 25 to 36. Now, he also played, let me make sure, 16 games. So you're looking in total, he had, let's run math, half of his games were inside of the top 36. The other half were not. And again, that's just inconsistency that I don't love for fantasy. The big thing about fantasy football, where you finish on a week-to-week basis is fine. Where you finish on an overall season, pretty good. But the thing that lacks is how you got there. I need to print this on a t-shirt. How you score your points is more important than how many points you score. I say this every single year. And every year, it reigns more and more true. It's the Amari Cooper syndrome. I don't care. Amari Cooper can come out one week and score 30 points. Doesn't fucking matter if the next week he goose eggs and gives you 10. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Why? Because he only helped you win 1 game. He didn't help you win both. So that's kind of where I'm at with Chase Claypool now, where just the inconsistency scares the absolute fuck out of me. That being said, he did have 109 targets and 62 receptions. Pretty good numbers for a rookie, all things considered. Anything over 100 targets, again, it's just volume that you just like to see when gunning for some of these late wide receivers, just guaranteed opportunity. Claypool's absolutely going to have that. I just need to be able to see some consistency. So if you want to take the shot on Claypool, by all means, go ahead and do it. Just because you know at the worst case scenario, he's going to be a threat in the red zone on this team that should be able to move the ball pretty easily, and that's just going to lead to touchdown opportunity. So if I had to take one, maybe Claypool is the guy, but you can even see me just start to think about this as it's coming out of my mouth, and I just don't know what to do with some of these wide receivers in Pittsburgh. And then with Juju, for me, Juju is going to be the most valuable in terms of just PPR leagues. I just trust him coming out of the slot, or if they have him on the outside, just a PPR guy. The touchdowns, even still, he had 9 touchdowns last year. Like, was Juju actually as bad as we made him out to be? So Juju last year had 3 games as a wide receiver 1, 4 games as a wide receiver 2, and 3 games as a wide receiver 3. He did play in all 16 games, but again, let's run some numbers there. I mean, that's 10 games. 10 out of 16 was a top 36, so it's not as terrible, but it's still not the consistency that you would like, especially with where you were drafting Juju Smith-Schuster last year. He still had 128 targets, 97 receptions, so again, just PPR guy. But the big thing about Juju was his average depth of target just continues to plummet. They are literally using him in the screen game and hoping that Juju can make a play instead of actually utilizing him to his strengths, which is you can put Juju anywhere on the field, use him down the field, use him in the screen game, use him in the middle of the field, and they just don't do it. So, all that being said, in terms of what wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers that I'm looking to take, now that I've actually talked it out, because I literally have in my notes as I'm speaking all of this, my notes for the Steelers says, what the fuck do you do with these wide receivers? Like, that is what it says on my pad. Now that even I've worked this out in my head, I go 2 different routes here. Number 1, if I'm looking for just somebody who I think is going to be consistent, I'm going to go for Deontay Johnson. If you are just looking for a stabilizing force in your draft, I'm going to go Deontay Johnson. If you are looking for extreme upside, Chase Claypool. And if you're just looking for a nice safe floor, very similar to Deontay Johnson, but maybe you get him a bit later, I'm going to go Juju. And in fact, let me check their ADPs right now before we move off of them. Pitt. Okay. So here's current ADP. Deontay Johnson's going in the 5th round. Around Deontay Johnson, we got Kenny Golladay, hamstring injury. We'll see where that goes. Tyler Lockett, Odell, DJ Moore, Jamar Chase, Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins. I would rather have all those guys than Deontay Johnson, to be honest. And then we have Chase Claypool at 6'12". And around Claypool is Higgins, Claypool, Devonta Smith, Sutton, Chark, Juju. I would rather, my order for that, I would go Higgins. Smith just got injured, but like we'll see where that goes. And if in a vacuum, if everybody's healthy, let me put it that way because we are just a bit out from the season. I'm going to go Higgins, Smith, Sutton, Claypool, Chark. That's kind of where my order lies for that. And then we have Juju going at 802. And around Juju, I mean, Juju's going to be the last wide receiver taken here, so it doesn't really matter who he's going around. If you want Juju to be able to get him there, and if not, or I guess if you want Juju, he'll be the last Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver to go. So basically what that means is that you're going to be able to get Juju at the most value if he's the last one taken, because you played the waiting game, and what that does if the other 2 go before him is that you just have him kind of in your lap, and you didn't have to make that choice between going Claypool or Juju or Deontay Johnson and Juju. You just have the opportunity to just have him in your lap. You didn't have to make that decision. You didn't have to get it wrong, quote unquote. Whereas whoever drafted those 2 guys before him had to have gotten it wrong, theoretically. So that's where I'm at. The upside of Claypool, like in like that 6-12 spot though, like it's there. It's definitely there. You're banking on touchdowns, I feel like, just a little bit. And so maybe just knowing when to start him is going to be the biggest challenge. Again, Deontay's going to be consistent. Claypool has the upside. Juju, PPR guy. Very similar to that Jarvis Landry role for Juju, but I think maybe just a step below, if I'm being honest. So that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. In terms of just quarterback, we'll wrap this up with Big Ben. Big Ben to me, lost it a bit. Just the days of being able to confidently start Big Ben week in and week out, I think, are gone. And he's still going to have great weapons, but I just don't know what he can do in the current state of this Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Like, it should still be able to put points on the board. I just don't know if Big Ben still has it. That's my big fear, because we saw the way that team just slid in the back of the year. Let's pull this up, actually, because I don't have the numbers offhand. Actually, I might be able to have the numbers on hand. Give me a second here. What did Big Ben do? Yeah. So last year, Big Ben had 5 games as a quarterback 1, 9 games as a quarterback 2, and 1 game as a quarterback 3. In Superflex, I love Big Ben a lot more than I do in single quarterback. It's just because He's still good at gunsling, I think. Just how good he is, like, we'll see. Like, for example, he didn't even surpass 4,000 yards last year and he played 15 games. Like, that's kind of what I'm talking about. He's still at 600 pass attempts, which is the number that I want to see from a quarterback like him, especially with the cast of weapons. But just the consistency of the output that you're going to get, that's what the concern is. Just being able to dip like that, where you see the drop-off between 5 games of the top 12 and 9 games of the top 24, that's where the issue lies for me in terms of Big Ben. Now, let's go on to the Baltimore Ravens. All right, moving over to the Baltimore Ravens now, there's quite a bit to talk about with this team. Let's start off with Lamar Jackson. It's no secret. Lamar Jackson is my baby boy, and this year, more than any year, the disrespect is here, and it's loud. So Lamar Jackson is currently being drafted as the 4th quarterback off the board, and even earlier this offseason, that was QB5 because Dak was going ahead of him just before the whole Dak injury. They're trying to be a bit cautious with Dak right now, and so we don't know if we're going to get Dak 100% week 1. I think we're going to, but just know there was a point this season where Lamar Jackson was going at QB5 earlier in the offseason. But you're going to get Lamar Jackson at a value this year, and here's why. Because you're going to have Pat Mahomes go 1, Josh Allen 2, Kyler Murray 3, and then that 4 or 5, let's just say Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, doesn't matter. You're still going to get a rushing quarterback who's going to get 1,000 yards on the ground and has an improved offensive cast around him. You're going to get another year of J.K. Dobbins. They bring in Sammy Watkins, make of that what you will. They bring in Rashad Bateman through the draft, Marquise Brown, apparently having a good camp, and you still have Mark Andrews. So the cast in Baltimore has improved. Lamar Jackson, still a running quarterback, and because of that, just all these factors together, you're going to get a guy guaranteed top 5. Yes, you get him in that number 5 or 4 spot, but you're not going to be spending a 2nd or 3rd round pick to get Lamar. I've seen Lamar going in in the early 6th. Like, Lamar has slid from the mocks that I've been doing. Even if you get Lamar in the 5th, like, that's kind of the window that I'm looking at for Lamar, to where you're looking at your team, and let's just say you get Lamar in the 5th. It'd be early 5th, maybe he slides to the late. We'll see how it goes, but let's just play this out just a little bit here. Let's say you're in the back. You would probably be in the back. It'd be the 4 or 5 turn. So let's say you're at pick 10, okay? You go Travis Kelce and Aaron Jones, and then you go, what do I want to do here on the turn? So you go, you would go Kelce, Jones, 4, 5. It would actually be on the 5-6 turn, excuse me. So you go Kelce, Jones, and then in the 3rd round, that 3rd, 4th, what would you have there? Let's actually pull this up instead of me trying to just rattle this off the top of my head. So let's go Kelce, Jones, and then we go DeAndre Swift. Maybe Swift falls just a little bit. And then we'll go Swift and Mike Evans. Sure, let's do it. Let's do it. Doesn't bother me. So you go Kelce, Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, Mike Evans, and your 5th is Lamar Jackson. See what I'm saying? Like that's what I'm talking about. You just say those names out loud, and it's like, oh, that's a championship caliber team, right? Surface level alone, you're set at the running back position. You have a stud tight end. You have a stud wide receiver who you got in the 4th round, and then you top that off with a rushing quarterback who's going to rush for over 1,000 yards, who's going to have a much better offensive cast around him for the first time in his career, might I add. And that's the difference here. And even honestly, if you want, I'm not the biggest fan of going with an early quarterback and an early tight end, so we can even substitute this out just a little bit. But that mock just kind of gives you the well-rounded team that you could possibly have if you go Lamar Jackson. Now, the caveat that I have for this is that if you're going to get Lamar Jackson, you can't reach. You can't reach because that's where it's going to kill you. Lamar Jackson can't. I'm going to use the word can't, but I think you know what I mean. Lamar Jackson can't go before Mahomes. He can't go before, I think he can go before Josh Allen, but in terms of the way that the board's going to fall, let someone take Josh Allen first. Do not take Josh Allen. Let somebody else do it for you. So Mahomes, Allen, Kyler, because you're going to get that gunslinging arm. Hopefully, Arizona unlocks him, and then obviously the rushing ability as well. And then you go Lamar. So if you're going to go Lamar Jackson, you need to wait. Just let him fall into your lap, and that's where the true value for him actually is. Just don't reach, because then the value is gone, right? The whole reason why we try and wait on quarterback as long as possible is so we extrapolate all the value and that we don't reach, because when you look by and large at the quarterback position, there's not a whole lot of differences between quarterback 4 and quarterback 12. But with the superstar ability of Lamar Jackson, that's definitely going to be a separating factor in that decision. And so the longer you wait, and if he just happens to fall into your lap, that's when I'm looking to take him. In terms of the running backs here, I love J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins is one of my favorite second-year players right now. His ADP right now is beautiful, actually, if you really look at it. J.K. Dobbins is going in the back of the second, and that's where great value is to be had. Unfortunately, you're deciding between Dobbins and guys like Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, Calvin Ridley. So the wide receiver options there are a lot more enticing, but I need you to be wary of this. Again, the way that the wide receivers are really shaking out right now, you can wait. But if you go past J.K. Dobbins, you have Josh Jacobs. That situation in Oakland or in Las Vegas is kind of a nightmare. Chris Carson, solid. David Montgomery, solid. DeAndre Swift, solid. But we'll kind of see how that Detroit situation shakes out. That is a tongue twister. Miles Sanders, Myles Gaskin, James Robinson down, Mike Davis kind of in the middle there. So when I'm looking at this, J.K. Dobbins is one of the last true running backs that I'm dying to have, and I just know how scarce the running back position is. So I'm going to be more apt to take J.K. Dobbins as opposed to a wide receiver there, who is probably going to be a stud, but it's just the matter of I don't trust the running backs after J.K. Dobbins, so I'm going to take my shot there. Gus Edwards, fine later on as a nice handcuff, or honestly, just he should be able to get some work in that Baltimore system as well. When you're going to start him remains to be seen. I'm not entirely sure. So I am always wary about taking backup running backs, but if you are going to take one, you can do a lot worse than Gus Edwards. Now, wide receivers. This is where this team gets interesting. Let me pull up ADP here real quick. I want to start off with rookie wide receiver Rashad Bateman. Guys, can you name the last true number one wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens? Because off the top of my head, I don't know if I can. I truly do not know if I can. My head goes back to Steve Smith and Anquan Bolden, which was literally a decade ago. Like, who was the last true dominant number one wide receiver that Baltimore has had? Well, guess what? They have one now, and his name is Rashad Bateman, and he is going extremely late in your redraft leagues. Rashad Bateman right now. Wide receiver, 58, going at 1309. Pretty good. Pretty good. Like, that's what I'm talking about here. That is value that you cannot find because he has the opportunity to step into this Baltimore Ravens team who have been looking for a true number one wide receiver, and now they have him. They spent a first-round pick on this kid. He is probably my favorite rookie wide receiver coming out of this class just because of the opportunity that he finds himself in. Yes, you have Devonta Smith and Jamar Chase, but in terms of just like opportunity and team need, Rashad Bateman fills the hole that Baltimore has been aching to fill for so long. So I love Bateman. I love Bateman in Dynasty. I love Bateman in redraft. Just being able to take a shot on a guy like that late in your draft is perfect. Marquise Brown for me, dead. Sammy Watkins, don't really care about. And then you have Mark Andrews, who is still an elite tight end and is going to be Lamar Jackson's. Probably, like, that's the thing is, when you look at the offense in terms of passing breakdown, Bateman is going to cement himself as the one in the wide receiver room, but I still think Andrews is going to be the number one in terms of the passing offense as a whole, and that's just because of the connection that Andrews and Lamar Jackson have. But again, you're getting Bateman at a 13th round discount, so you might as well take the shot on him there if you're going to take a shot on a Baltimore Ravens pass catcher. Because again, like, just out of curiosity here, Marquise Brown is going in the 10th round, and I would much rather have Bateman over Brown. Where's Watkins going? Watkins is going in the 15th, 67th wide receiver off the board. But yeah, just go Bateman. If you're going to go Baltimore Ravens pass catching wide receiver, you go Bateman. Do I have anything else here? I really don't. Like, Baltimore is really easy for me. There's not a whole lot to think about here. It's Bateman is going to cement himself as the number one. Lamar Jackson is being undervalued in drafts. J.K. Dobbins is a really good find in the back of the second round, especially as your running back 2 or maybe even your running back 1 if you went with that tight end or wide receiver early. And just avoid all the other Baltimore Ravens pass catchers besides Rashad Bateman because the value just simply isn't there and you don't know what the upside is going to be. So, let's move on to our final team now, the Cincinnati Bengals. All right, let's do it. So, I got a lot to talk about here for the Bengals. I think Cincinnati, is my favorite offense to draft. I've been gunning for these dudes like crazy in my mocks. When you are looking at that second round and Joe Mixon is available in the back of your draft, the back of the second round, Where are we at? Is this going to load up? Hang on. There we go. And Joe Mixon is available in the mid to late second round, and you can start your draft with Zeke Elliott and Joe Mixon. Oh my God. The thing about Mixon that mildly concerning, but not really, is that Mixon has never had like his stud season. We've been waiting for Mixon to just emerge as like this top 7 running back, but I actually don't think he's ever finished inside of the top 8. Let me vet that real quick, but I'm 90% certain that's what the stat is. So Joe Mixon, running back 49 last year, obviously was a bit banged up. Running back 13, running back 10, running back 34. So he's never cracked the top 10. He's never cracked the top 9, And we've been waiting for this big breakout. Hasn't happened yet. If anything, this is going to be the year where it happens, and this is why. You don't have Gio Bernard. Gio Bernard has been the bane of Joe Mixon fantasy owners' existence for the past 4 seasons. Because Gio Bernard steps on the field during third downs, takes the receiving work. Gio Bernard steps on the field during a random drive in the third quarter and takes Joe Mixon's touches. And that just isn't a factor anymore. You go down the depth chart of the Cincinnati offense and their running back position, and it's hell. It is Joe Mixon, it is Samaje Perine, it is Chris Evans, and it is Puka fucking Williams, my baby boy. It's Joe Mixon's backfield. Guys, this is what I'm talking about when I say you need to look for workhorse running backs. And you find them, and you take them, and you hold them close, and you never let them go. Joe Mixon in the back of the second is a fucking steal and a half because he's going to get 300 touches. This offense is going to fucking roll, and he's going to be incredibly valuable for your fantasy football team this season. I know the line's still bad, but what happens when Joe Burrow's scrambling outside the pocket? Guess what? Dump off to Joe Mixon. Oh no, it's third down. It's third and long because Joe Burrow just got sacked. Guess what? Check down to Mixon. This is going to be Joe Mixon's backfield for the first time ever. They just paid him a shit ton of money, and I am so excited to watch Mixon cook this year. Now let's go over to the wide receivers. This wide receiver trio, I have them outside of my top 5 wide receiver cores in the NFL for fantasy, but they should probably be on the list, admittedly. It's just they're a bit unproven, and the unproven is the first wide receiver taken off the board in this past NFL draft, Jamar Chase. And by all means, Jamar Chase is an absolute fucking stud. The thing that I love about these wide receivers is where you're getting them in drafts right now. So let's pull up the ADP. You're getting Jamar Chase at 608. You're getting T. Higgins at 612. You are getting Tyler Boyd at 901. You want to know something? All three of those guys are going to have 100 targets. The thing I've been saying about Jamar Chase, let's just start off with him. A.J. Green last year. A.J. Green, old washed A.J. Green, who actually led the league in uncatchable targets. A.J. Green, wait, I need to pull up the Cardinals page, not the Bengals. A.J. Green last year had 104 targets. Do you know how many targets Jamar Chase is going to have this year? 114. There was a lot of panic when the Bengals drafted Jamar Chase, kind of like what happens to T. Higgins, what happens to Tyler Boyd. Guys, Jamar Chase is going to step in to this offense, fulfill the A.J. Green role, and this offense is going to keep spinning. It's not going to miss a beat because the roles are so perfectly carved out to where you're going to have Jamar Chase on the outside, T. Higgins on the outside, and Tyler Boyd lined up right here in the slot, and they're just going to run. And Joe Burrow is going to go bang, 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 and we're going to be good to go. And that's just what's going to happen. I'm so not worried about Jamar Chase. I've been doing mocks, and I've intentionally been getting Jamar Chase as my wide receiver 2 or my first wide receiver just because I have no concerns. I have literally no concerns about Jamar Chase this year. None. And the same can be said for T. Higgins. Like, I was right on Higgins all along last year. Higgins was one of my favorite wide receivers coming out of last year's drafts. Hit really well on that. And you're just going to have the same situation. Like T. Higgins had 108 targets last year, 900 yards, 6 touchdowns. Was one of the most productive rookie wide receivers in the league, right? You had Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, and T. Higgins, like 1, 2, 3. And Jefferson's season was obviously historic. CeeDee Lamb was great, kind of up and down with the whole quarterback situation down there in Dallas. But T. Higgins, I mean, just week after week, even without Joe Burrow, was a stud. 4 games as a wide receiver 1, 5 games as a wide receiver 2, and 3 games as a wide receiver 3. Like, what more could you ask for a guy who just steps into his role in the offense, finds his groove, and just kind of takes off? Like, just a guy who can start every single week with no real concerns. So I love playing T. Higgins last year, and I just don't see the issue with Higgins. I don't see the issue with Jamar Chase. Tyler Boyd, I'm a bit lower on, admittedly, just because I'm not sure the consistency of Boyd. Like, that's my one real thing that scares me about him. But just having Tyler Boyd on your bench as like a 4th option, like, and just a plug-and-play guy if you need to, injuries, bye weeks, whatever the case, pretty good. Like, Tyler Boyd if I had to rank, like, consistent wide receivers that I would love to have on my bench to play in a pinch, it's kind of 3 guys from this division. Now that I'm saying it and now I'm going through this out loud, it's Jarvis Landry, it's Tyler Boyd, and it's Juju. Because all 3 guys fill the same role on your team. They're PPR guys. They're all going to play in the slot. You're just going to kind of put your feet up, and you know they're going to get 8 to 10 targets. They'll rack up 6 catches, and they're going to have 80 yards and have the potential for a touchdown. Like, and you'll take that. You'll take that from your 3rd wide receiver. You'll take that for your flex option. What more do I need to say? And all that being said, Joe Burrow, while I haven't been targeting him a lot in mocks, he's a guy that I love. I just buy the bounce back. By all reports, he's ahead of schedule in terms of the torn ACL. Looks solid by all accounts. And if you're looking to wait on quarterback, guys, Joe Burrow has the weapons. I was actually on a call with somebody earlier today, and I was explaining to them my love for this offense, and I'm like, dude, like, this offense is built like LSU's. The same LSU offense that Joe Burrow fucking torched the earth with, right? I'm looking at this right now. Let me pull this up. What's Burrow's ADP? Because I know it's been rising a bit, but yeah, I mean, you're getting Burrow at 902. And after Burrow is Lawrence, Ryan, Deshaun, we'll see, Baker, Trey Lance. And ahead of Burrow is Tannehill, Hurts, Stafford. Like, that sounds about right. And in fact, I think I know for a fact that I have Joe Burrow ahead of Justin Herbert this year. I do. I mean, I have Joe Burrow as my quarterback 9. Like, I am that big of a believer in Burrow this year. Just the talent. We saw the flashes of it last year. It took him a bit to get it going. But you can definitely see the talent. The pass-catching weapons that he has. Just the way that this offense is going to cook, I think, this year. I'm all in on Cincinnati. Cincinnati is probably going to be my favorite team to watch, all things considered. I would draft anybody from this offense, needless to say. And that's actually going to wrap up our AFC North divisional preview. So if you enjoyed this video or this podcast, be sure to hit that like button down below. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And do me a favor, actually. We're trying to grow, what are we going to call this? The Nest? I kind of like calling it The Nest. That was actually supposed to be the original name for the studio. But The Nest works well for what we're trying to build here. We're trying to grow the Nest. We're trying to grow the audience. So do me a favor. We all know one person that plays fantasy football that we are not in a league with. Do me a favor. Tell them about this podcast. Tell them about the factoids that I just spit at you for an hour. I promise you they are going to love it. They are going to take the steps to start winning their leagues on a more consistent basis by taking in our content over here and joining the winning team. So again, hit that like button, leave a review, tell a friend, follow me on all social media platforms at FFVulture, and thank you so much for watching. Remember, people come and go, but fantasy championships are forever, and I will see you in the next video.